If you want to know how close we are to the events described in the book of Revelation, stop looking at the sky and start looking at the ground. Because right now, in the hills of northern Israel, the physical requirements for the end of the age are being assembled, piece by piece, in plain sight. In June 2026, the National Red Heifer Institute announced the discovery of a new, potentially flawless red heifer calf named Tamima. 6 weeks later, on the eve of Tisha B'Av, the holiest day of mourning in the Jewish calendar, the day that commemorates the destruction of both the first and second temples, a second red calf was born in Golan Heights. At the same time, the Temple Institute in Jerusalem confirmed that a modular stone altar, built without the use of metal tools, exactly as the Bible commands, is complete and ready for immediate use. More than 70 sacred temple vessels have been forged. A cohort of ritually pure priests have been identified and are in training. And 150,000 Israelis have already enrolled in the temple service education programs, out of a stated goal of 200,000. They are not waiting for prophecy to fulfill itself. They are actively building the infrastructure to fulfill it.
This is Cryptic Accounts. By paranoid people, for paranoid people. Cryptic Accounts.
Welcome to Cryptic Accounts, a podcast by paranoid people for paranoid people. I'm your host, Patrick Ryan. As always, good to be back. Before we get into any details about this week's episode, and this is going to be a fun follow-up, because we have a lot of new details to cover today. So, but if you're new here, hit subscribe, hit the bell on YouTube so you actually know when new episodes come out. If this one gets in your head like it got in mine, share it with somebody. And everything that gets talked about on here and every episode, sources, all the back catalog, and the community live at crypticaccounts.com. You can find all the social media there. It's pretty much Cryptic Accounts at whatever you're trying to find us on. Pretty active there. Biggest on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Should do more on X, don't. But you can find everything at crypticaccounts.com. And I've got a fun one for you this week because this one isn't actually going to be solo. So I was on Reform or Die a couple weeks ago, as you guys know. And this week I decided to drag Kyle out to the actual podcast and get him involved over here. So with that being said, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce Kyle from Reform or Die. Hi. What's up, man?
Patrick, thanks for having me, man. It's crazy to be here. You know, I usually like to hide behind the camera. Now you're putting me out in front of the camera today.
A little bit. Yeah. It's, you guys will be doing something like that soon.
Yeah, we might be. We're tinkering. You know, we're not at the level of Cryptic Accounts, but, you know, we're trying over here. So,
I mean, you guys need to. it helps.
It does. It does.
But yeah, it was so I came on your podcast to talk about aliens, and now I'm going to have you on mine to talk about more biblical stuff. So we're just kind of crossing over into each other's wheelhouse, I feel like.
It's true. And I feel like I criminally underused you in our podcast. I feel like we needed more from you in that one. So maybe we'll have to have you back again sometime.
No, I'm definitely down to come on again, but no, it was a good time.
It was.
Why don't you tell everybody where they can find Reform or Die and where you can send them?
You can, well, this is a new thing, but you can find me at Kyle at Reform or Die on Twitter, or X as they call it these days. Or you can find any of our links to our podcasts on reformordie.com. So check us out and give us a listen. Right now it's audio only. We're looking to add some more video in the future. So
yeah, I think you guys will have fun with it.
It's been a good time.
It's gonna be a lot more work.
We do politics, we talk culture, and religious stuff. So Christian things. Yeah.
No, and this one is actually a follow-up from an episode I did when the show first came back last year. I think it was the second episode on the comeback. And a lot's happened since the original Red Heifer stuff happened last year.
It was a big story. A couple years ago, it got a ton of traction.
Because that's really where it started. And I'll kind of give some like backlog on that to kind of get everybody up to speed. If you didn't hear that episode, or if you've just been a year, like I looked back over everything. I'm just like, now what's all been happening? Because I've been following it for a while now. So I guess let's just jump into it.
Go for it.
So, to understand why a couple of red cows in Israel have global geopolitical and spiritual implications, we got to go all the way back and just start where this all starts in the book of Numbers, chapter 19. So, God gives Moses and Aaron a very specific, highly unusual command, and that's the Israelites must find a red heifer, so a red cow with no defect, no blemish, and upon which a yoke has never been laid. So the requirements are extraordinarily strict. Traditional interpretation holds that even two hairs of another color are enough to disqualify the animal, and it must never have been used for any form of labor. You can't even lean on it. Did you know that that's actually in there? You can't have like leaned on this cow.
Whoa, that's next level.
You can't place a cloth on its back. Any of that. Like if you ever like threw like a blanket over it, done, invalidated.
Wow.
It can't have been yoked, obviously, for work. It can't have any scars, a brand, or a puncture hole from like an ear tag. So it's very rare to say the least. The ritual itself is equally precise. The heifer is taken outside the camp and slaughtered. Its blood is sprinkled 7 times towards the front of the tabernacle. Then the entire animal, flesh, hide, blood, and dung, is burned on a pyre along with cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet yarn. A clean mat gathers the ashes and stores them outside the camp. Then those ashes are later mixed with fresh living water, which is water from a moving like stream. That's living water. I had to look that up the first time I heard it. I'm like, what is that?
Makes sense.
What does that mean? Yeah, it's got to be from like a river or something to produce the water of purification. And this water is the only means provided in the Mosaic law for cleansing of a person or object that has become ritually impure through the contact with death. So a lot of rules.
A corpse, right?
Yeah, they were touching dead stuff a lot, and God was like, knock it off.
I think in our modern world, we just don't encounter death as much as they did, you know?
Well, I mean, have you ever driven by roadkill and been like, hey, I want to get out and touch that?
Yeah, that's true.
That was apparently a big problem, I feel like.
They have roadkill removal teams. I mean, somebody's doing it.
Well, they're ritually impure.
Yeah, well, they definitely are.
They're definitely ritual. I don't know what they would. I kind of wonder. Well, my thought went to what do they do in Israel with roadkill? And it's like somebody just cleaned it up and then they're just impure.
Art kill, like they rolled it over on a cart.
They probably have a goyim clean it up. Honestly, they probably got a guy for that. Just a guy that's he works really hard on Saturdays, but the rest of the time he just cleaning up dead stuff. I guess I don't know. So, but why does all this matter? Because why does the purification, all this stuff matter? Without purification, no one can enter a temple if there were a temple. Like when there were temples, you couldn't go into it if you were ceremonially unclean. So a priest couldn't offer a sacrifice, no altar can be dedicated. The red heifer is not actually like a secondary thing or an optional ritual. It's the absolute prerequisite for the Jewish temple functioning. Now, here's where it gets philosophically interesting. The red heifer is classified in Jewish law as a chalk, a divine statute whose logic cannot be fully understood by human reason. And the paradox is built right into the ritual itself. The priest who performs the ceremony, the one who burns the heifer and oversees the purification of others, he himself becomes ritually impure in the process of doing this. The very act of purifying others makes the priest himself unclean. He purifies the defiled and is himself defiled by the act. And it's not like I don't know what this means. No, all the way back to King Solomon was like confounded by this, who said to have to understand all of the commandments reportedly. And King Solomon was supposedly somebody who understood everything, read the law, knew it. He reportedly admitted that the red heifer was beyond his comprehension. The author of Hebrews understood this paradox and pointed directly to what it foreshadowed. In Hebrews 9:13 through 14, he writes, "For if the blood of bulls and goats and the ashes of a heifer sprinkling the unclean sanctifies to the purifying of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to God, purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God. So the red heifer was always a type, like a foreshadowing of it, pointing to a greater purification. I think most people would agree with that. The ashes could cleanse the flesh, but only the blood of Christ can cleanse the conscience. Historically, finding an animal that meets these standards is almost impossible. Jewish tradition holds that only 9 heifers have actually ever been sanctified in history. From the times of Moses to the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD, Maimonides, the great medieval Jewish philosopher, I think I butchered his name. Maimonides?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Maimonides. I meant to look that one up, and I'm like, nah, it's fine. We'll get it. Nah, it's a big thing on this show.
No. That's what you need to say.
I do be butchering some words every once in a while. He wrote the 10th red heifer would be prepared by the Messiah himself, which kind of creates, not everybody is definitely in the same school of thought of how this process goes, when it happens, what it's supposed to mean. And that's why the search for the 10th red heifer is not just a religious exercise. It is the minds of those pursuing it, in the minds of those pursuing it, a messianic act. Like that's what the Jews think they're doing with this. So for nearly 2,000 years, there's been no temple, no altar, no ashes. The practical barriers have been complete, but in recent years, a coordinated, well funded effort has emerged to remove those barriers one by one. So many of you, as I think you were saying, you were aware of all the way back in 2022 and 2023, a story really hit that a Texas businessman named Byron Stenson, working with the Temple Institute in Jerusalem, located 5 red Angus heifers in Texas that appeared to meet the biblical requirements. And he had spent years advertising in rancher magazines. I don't know if you knew this. He was like putting out ads for like years. Like, hey, if you got a red heifer, I'll give you $5,000 for it right now. Like, I didn't know about that part.
Oh, he bought them. Or was he raising them?
Well, he raised these. But he'd been for years before that, had been putting ads out. Just, I don't know, wherever ranchers get their news, I guess.
He's looking to create the perfect genetic cow to sell to the Jews, basically.
Yeah.
He's like stacking the cows, being like, okay, I got to get the perfect cow going so I can sell this, to Israel.
No, that's pretty much exactly that's kind of what the Temple Institute's been doing too.
Okay.
Like, and we'll get into more of that. Like, but that's essentially what's happening is they're trying to read it as well. And I've definitely talked to people who think, well, doesn't that have said, like, doesn't that kind of like defeat what's happening if people are trying to make it happen? I'm like, what? How God uses people to do, like, to fulfill his means all the time. So if it's time for the perfect red heifer to show up, and if it does mean all these things, then it could appear organically, or it could appear because people are trying to make it happen. Like,
I just love that they turned to Texas for their red heifers. Like that is, you got to tip your hat to Texas in that way,
I mean, when I think of like cow ranching, and like that's one of the main places for it is Texas.
And they're not doing it like that, like they are in Texas out there in Israel, Too many bombs dropping all over the place, probably, or missiles flying.
And you know what? I said $5,000 reward. It was actually 50. I missed a zero there. He was willing to pay $50,000.
Oh, the Jewish guys paid?
No.
He did
Byron Stenson
to genetically get the perfect cows.
Yeah,
okay.
Advertising.
Well, I wonder my question is, what did he sell it for?
Well,
if you got a ritually pure red heifer that you could sell to the Jews, I mean,
I don't think I've never read anywhere that he actually sold.
Did he just give them?
Yes, that's
okay. That's next
I've
level.
never heard anything reported that says he then sold it for X amount of dollars, or he was paid for these. Like, and I think it was just a donation, because when he finally identified 21 candidates, he after they were like certified by a rabbi and inspected, so he finds 21. 5 of them are selected by rabbinical standards or whatever. And then in September 2022, he rented a plane himself and flew them to Israel. So that, like, again, I didn't read anything that said, like,
Is he Jewish?
no.
Stenson, is that what you said his last name is? Is that a Jewish last name? I'm not great with last names. That doesn't sound that Jewish, does it? Or maybe it is. I don't know. You guys tell me, but
I guess
I'm pretty bad with the names.
I guess when I think of
Byron,
yeah, when I think of, I guess he could be.
maybe he is.
When I think of a Texas rancher, I just assume.
I should have pulled up a photo of him, you know.
I mean, you still could. We've got time.
That's true.
Like, and now, you know what? I am kind of curious.
Now you got to know.
I mean, you go ahead and do it over there.
I could do it. I'll be your backup here.
And it's not going to take her.
Oh, Stinson. Byron Stinson.
Oh, no, that is, I do not believe he is Jewish.
Okay.
Maybe.
Is it with an E or an I?
I'll put a picture of him up for you, those of you watching. If you're on the audio feed, I mean, as usual, sorry, go to YouTube or Rumble. But yeah, he does. He might be, but nothing about looking at him screams Jew.
Maybe he was wanting to issue in, other things.
Well, there are a lot of non-Jewish people who I would say go with like a Zionist agenda. So I would say he probably falls into that camp of trying to essentially bring on Armageddon and all that. Like that's usually how
End of the world.
Yeah.
He's ready, man.
We can get Jesus to come back quicker if we could just find these cows.
He's like, I want Christ to come back in my lifetime. I got to get these red heifers rolling.
I mean,
or mooing, I guess.
Yeah,
maybe that's the better way of putting it.
Probably. So evangelical Christians and Orthodox Jews celebrated when all this happened. Hamas, however, cited the arrival, and I didn't know this. Like, I was looking back into stuff to do this. Did you know that's why Hamas said they did October 7th?
So
was because those cows showed up.
I had heard that I know a lot of dispensational Zionist types. They do look to Amir, I can't pronounce his last name, Sarfati or something like that.
That sounds correct.
And he was saying that a lot of Israel's enemies were using this as justification for the war, or basically for attacking Israel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Hamas military spokesman came out and said that's why they were doing it, because they accused the Israelis of bringing red cows to the Holy Land, framing the heifers as a direct threat to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Hamas understood the implication. The red heifer is the first domino in a chain that ends with the temple replacing the Dome on the Rock. Like, they know what it means. Like, they know why Israel would want red heifers, and they know where the red heifers are going to end up, or what they're going to do that then leads to. They know. They're aware of it. So what happened to those 5 heifers, though, is I don't know if you followed it after last year. Okay, so I don't know if you know about this. In July 2025, reports and videos began circulating online claiming that one of the Texas heifers had been successfully sacrificed in a secret ceremony. Byron Stinson himself posted that the ceremony, quote, went perfect and was the first in 2,000 years.
He posted about it?
Yep.
Oh.
A social media personality named Adam King went on Timcast, which, if you're not aware, Timcast, millions of viewers. He went on and held up plastic bags claiming to contain the ashes, which I don't know if I guess that would work. Saying the group had, quote, fooled everybody and successfully performed the ritual. Because when they went out and did it, like, they posted it. There's a video you can watch of it actually, like, being burnt. They said it was a practice, that it was an imperfect one. And this was just, we're practicing.
Trial run, guys, trial run.
Yeah. And he even claimed that the ash and water solution was already producing miracles, including restoring sight to the blind. I hadn't heard that either, but apparently he went on Timcast and said all that.
Big claim. Wait, Stinson did?
No, this is Adam King.
Oh, okay. Who I don't know, but
I wasn't aware of him either. Pretty big guy on social media, though. Okay. Apparently not in stuff I follow. The Temple Institute on the other hand, the actual rabbinic authority overseeing the project, quietly issued a clarification. They said the July 1st ceremony was a practice run, a rehearsal using a heifer that had already been disqualified due to blemishes. The ceremony was held on a remote hilltop in northern Israel, not on the Mount of Olives, as the law requires. Which there is, I looked into that more. There's actually some debate within that community on whether it actually has to happen on the Mount of Olives. Like, there's no consensus on how any of this works. Like, there's kind of two or three camps on just about every point of it, of just like, nah, I think it's like this, and they think it's like that. And so it's kind of hard to tell what they're counting and who's counting what. That, like I said, held on a different mountaintop. The priest's purity status was disputed also, and the location was wrong. The procedure had multiple halachic deficiencies. In fact, by August 2025, the Temple Institute confirmed that all 5 of the original Texas heifers had been fully disqualified now. They came out and said, nah, none of them were good enough. They'd aged out past the window. They grew non-red hairs or developed blemishes. So, according to all that, the Texas experiment over. But like I said, there's kind of been debate on whether or not is that's kind of weird. Like, they said they were going to do it in like a few weeks, and then suddenly the other 4 are just instantly disqualified all of a sudden. But this is where the story gets darker, because when the Temple Institute acknowledged the rehearsal, they added a detail that should have stopped everyone cold. Because of intense global opposition and scrutiny, they stated they would now, quote, keep a tight lid on our efforts and generally not advertise our successes. So they kind of contradict themselves there. Everything's disqualified, but also we're not going to tell you anything else that we're doing, and we're going to try and keep this all hush hush that it's happening. So the promised second ceremony on the Mount of Olives never happened publicly. So the spectacle's over. The operation had gone underground completely. And then there was nothing for like the next year. And before we get into the new 2026 candidates, there's a piece of this story that almost never gets covered, and it's arguably the most astonishing detail of all. The red heifer ritual does not require a perfect cow. It requires a ritually pure priest to perform it. And here's the problem. The only way to achieve ritual purity from corpse impurity, the most severe form of impurity in Jewish law, is through the ashes of a red heifer, which means the priest who burns the heifer must already be pure, but everyone in the modern world is impure because there have been no ashes for 2,000 years. So it's a perfect circular lock. And I kind of thought about this, and I'm kind of curious what you think. It didn't stop Moses from doing it. Like, Moses and Aaron were able to do it with the first one, and they wouldn't have been able to make themselves ceremonially clean.
Well, what does it say again in was it Deuteronomy 19?
It was Numbers 19.
Numbers, thank you. Numbers 19 says to bring you a red heifer without defect, in which there is no blemish, and on which a yoke has never come. So I guess it's kind of ambiguous as to what that means, without defect. Because I heard someone, I don't remember who said this to me, but that you could get a red heifer, but it had to have no more than 1 white hair or 1 black
2.
hair. Oh, 2. Okay, so yeah.
2 of an opposite color.
But doesn't this prove the point, right? That it's like, what does without defect really mean? Or are they relying on stuff in like the Talmud or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know about that. And that could be. Because every time I've heard this argument, like, and I go into it here, but also I don't know that it's really a hindrance. Because, like I said, Moses and Aaron, the original ones, wouldn't have been able to have been, especially Aaron. Like, you could argue maybe Moses, but Aaron, there's no way he could have been ceremonial clean, or clean for this. I mean, they were out because the rules for being like, it's not just not touching a dead thing. Like, there's stuff in Okay, I'll just let me get it. I'll pull. I got the verse right here. So before I like jump myself here, so the argument is the only way what they think, or what there are people who think that for this secular thing that's happening, you have to raise a priest from infancy who has never been exposed to corpse impurity. And this is where most people's understanding of the law is incomplete, because the rule is far stricter than simply not touching a dead body. Jewish law recognizes three distinct ways that corpse impurity can be transmitted. The first is tumat maga, direct physical contact with a corpse. The second is tumat masa, moving or carrying a corpse even without touching it. But the third is the one that changes everything, tumat ohel, which translate as tent impurity. It comes directly from Numbers 19:14. This is the law, and quote, this is the law. When a man dies in a tent, everyone who comes into the tent and everyone who is in the tent shall be unclean 7 days. The word tent is interpreted broadly to mean any shared roof, ceiling, or covering, a building, a room, a doorway overhang. Even a tree canopy can transmit it.
Wow. They really got it covered.
I mean, that is in the Bible, like that is in Numbers. But again, it's also only for 7 days. So I don't know what the big hangup is here exactly. Like, couldn't you just isolate somebody for a week?
So I kind of think it's getting to the question of like how much defilement did Israel come into contact with all the time? And there's more than just corpse, defilement and impurity, basically, that can enter into, like physical bodily discharges. Also, those contributed to whether or not they were clean or unclean. So basically, the idea was kind of that you just almost couldn't go through daily life without being unclean somehow.
Yeah.
And my understanding was that was kind of like a picture for Old Testament, because in the Old Testament, a lot of that stuff is just shadows and pictures for us to understand what Christ has accomplished for us, right? So like Christ is, the perfect Lamb of God. He was the sacrifice that ended all the rest of the sacrifices, So what, like, I guess it was just a picture of sin in a way, right? Like this clean, unclean system. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I think that's a good way to sum it up. That is, that's all a foreshadowing to Christ. It's all pointing to Christ.
But as far as like the Jewish side of it goes, they don't accept Christ as Messiah.
Yeah.
So they're still looking for a third temple. They're still looking for their savior. And so they're still abiding by these Old Testament ceremonial and religious laws, right?
Yes.
Well, the moral ones we, still think are good by and large, but like the ceremonial ones, we would say Christ fulfilled all those for us, so that we don't have to follow that stuff, like any of the national type of laws or any of that stuff that was particular to ancient Israel. I don't think those apply, right?
Well, yeah, no. Well, and they've kind of gone a whole different direction since there is no temple. That's when the Talmud starts. That's rabbinical. That's where the rabbinical stuff starts. Like, it was basically like the Pharisees were kind of the precursor to rabbis, and then Sadducees are still around today. Like, it's molded into something else entirely.
The Sadducees are still around that only accept the first 5 books.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
That's still a thing. And they're one that I've meant to dig into more. And if you've listened to last year's episode, I have not done the proper research, because we talked about it last time, because they don't believe in like angels, or like, really, they don't believe in much of a spiritual realm.
Life after death, they don't think that's a thing either.
No,
and or at least they didn't.
I've always been confused on like what they actually think of God then, or what's happening, why they're doing what they're doing. Like, I'm just
what's the point in being religious if there's no afterlife? That's kind of what I always wondered.
That was kind of the question that I probably should have answered before I did this one, because that was kind of the question that got posed last year, and I just didn't follow up on it. But okay, so don't have to necessarily touch a dead body. You can't be in the same room. If you're under the same roof as a corpse, even on a different floor of the same building, you can become impure. So this is why all ultra orthodox Kohonims or Kohonim are sometimes photographed on airplanes wrapped in large plastic bags when flying over cemeteries. They are creating a physical barrier, which I guess you can wrap yourself in plastic, and that's a way around this. Um, Creating a physical barrier to prevent the shared covering of the aircraft from connecting them to the graves below. For the priest who must perform the red heifer ceremony, this means a lifetime of extraordinary vigilance. He can't enter a hospital, not because he might touch a body, but because a hospital almost certainly contains one somewhere in the building, and the shared roof transmits the impurity throughout. So he can't attend a funeral indoors. He can't drive under an overhang that connects to a building where a body might be present. He can't visit a cemetery. He must have been born at home, not in a hospital. So that his very first breath was taken in a space free of corpse impurity, which again, I don't know where they're getting that from exactly. And it must be stuff that's extra because I mean, I get they're getting it from Numbers 19. It just seems excessive. And I go back to, well, how were Moses and Aaron okay then?
They've got a lot more stipulations, I think, in the Talmud, and I think they've got another book too, right? Is there more than just the Talmud? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a lot of other stuff that they lean on for their, I guess, moral guidance.
Yeah.
I can't tell you I'm an expert in
I'm not.
Jewish holy books, so other than the Old Testament, which I wouldn't even say I'm an expert, but I've read.
Yeah. So all these hurdles they have to go over, and you wouldn't think they'd be able to do it, but the Temple Institute announced that they have actually pulled this off. They have identified and are maintaining at least one young Kohen, a man of a priestly line who was born at home and has lived his entire life under these extraordinary restrictions.
He wrapped himself in
I just don't think he goes anywhere.
Oh, so it's like me, basically, just kept it home. No, I'm kidding.
But he was born at home.
He podcasts at home.
He probably does.
Yeah, right.
The National Red Heifer Institute keeps his identity in careful secrecy. So they've got this dude like hidden somewhere. So they probably, I mean, honestly, this has all been going on for like decades. So it makes sense that if they had these stipulations, they weren't already like trying to figure out somebody that'd be like, all right, now your baby's got to be born at home and then you can't let it go anywhere. I'm sure they fund all this. A recent report described an incident where this Cohen accidentally drove into a hospital parking lot to allow his wife to visit a family member. Scholars immediately convened to examine whether the overhang at the hospital entrance extended far enough to connect the parking lot to the building. So he almost messed it up.
Oh, no.
He drove his wife to a hospital, which, one, amazing he's married. Like, first of all, like, because it doesn't seem like he would get to go very many places.
Wouldn't that well, I guess. Okay, so question for you. If you become ritually unclean, do you stay that way? Or can he never have been ritually unclean?
I think they're going never.
Well, then you can't have, I don't think you could have sex then, right? Because bodily discharges, that's like isn't that like part of what makes you unclean in the Old Testament?
I thought that was just during time of the month.
Oh, maybe.
I thought that.
Maybe you're right.
And I think that's also in Numbers too.
So the men are fine, but
well, as long as you don't have sex during that.
Okay.
That, I believe, makes you ceremonially unclean. I mean, there's also like rules against that separately, but I think
more detail than I needed,
It is. There's a lot of stuff in those early books. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So they were worried about the parking garage being connected to the building and therefore to anybody that might be inside. And they concluded the lot was clear, but the incident illustrates the razor thin margins they are operating within. A pure Kohen, the Times of Israel report noted, may be even rarer than the red heifer itself. They're like, look, the dude, we can't find a red cow, but like to keep a dude from like going near a dead body his whole life, is a lot.
Which ironically does kind of make what the whole parallel between the clean unclean system and like sinning or not sinning, like that parallel even clearer, right? So it's easier to find a perfect red cow.
Yes.
A perfectly red cow with basically no hairs or whatever you say, 2 hairs off, you know. It's easier to do that than for someone to stay ritually clean their whole life, right? I mean, doesn't that just show you, like, if Christ has come for us, like, you know, that he had to be the perfect one, not just the perfect sacrifice, but he had to live a perfect life, you know?
It's a good illustration for sin, for sure.
It is a great illustration. And I'm just amazed they're still trying to get this perfect situation, you know?
They like rules a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
So with the Texas experiment behind them, the National Red Heifer Institute shifted to a domestic breeding program in Israel using imported genetics. The goal is no longer to find a lucky anomaly. The goal is to engineer a sustainable herd. So now they're like, we'll just build and breed our own.
What was the genetic modifying? I feel like it was called CRISPR or something like that. Was that a thing? What was that like program or whatever that was like a thing when it was early on? I can't remember, but it was like,
no idea what you're talking
they're
about.
basically a CRISPR cow or something. I'll have to look it up, make sure I'm not making up some term, but I thought that's what it was.
And while you're doing that, so in June 2026, a completely red calf was born in the Galilee region, discovered by Shay Gavon.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's CRISPR gene editing is a powerful technology that lets scientists change DNA with high accuracy. So they just need a CRISPR cow, Patrick. That's what they need.
That's what they needed. That's probably what they're doing.
That's what they're doing. Gotta be.
So Galilee region, they get one of their own in June of 2026. Shay Gavon is a cattle specialist working directly with the Institute at a breeding farm using semen imported from the United States. The calf emerged from a black-coated mother, yet appeared fully red at birth. They named her Tamima, meaning whole or unblemished. Because the breeders now understand exactly how strict the rules are, they refuse to place an ear tag on her at birth. Unfortunately, rabbinic inspectors later determined that Tamima had already received an ear tag before the Institute discovered her, creating a disqualifying blemish. She remains in the breeding program, but cannot provide the ashes. But then, 6 weeks later, in late July of 2026, a second red calf was born in the Golan Heights in Gavon's own herd. And it was born on the eve of Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av, which I hope I'm saying that right, is the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av. It is the single most catastrophic date in Jewish history. The first temple was destroyed on it in 586 BC. The second was destroyed on it in 70 AD. The expulsion of the Jews from Spain in 1492 fell on the same day. It is the day that Jewish people mourn the loss of everything the temple represented. And on the eve of that day, a red heifer is born in Golan Heights of this year.
Whoa.
And Gavon didn't mince words. He said the team at the Institute expected potential heifers to be born this season, but her birth, so close to such a special day, gives the strong sense that God is pressing us to accelerate the path towards building the temple. The real question is whether we want to. So the second calf has a unique complication. She was born as a twin to a male. In cattle, when a female is born as the twin of a male, shared blood circulation in the womb can cause a condition called freemartinism, internal reproductive abnormalities that are not visible from the outside. The rabbis are currently debating a profound halachic question. Does an internal invisible defect disqualify a red heifer, or does the requirement no blemish apply only to what is externally visible? Rabbi Azaria Ariel, head of the Institute's Biat Midrash, stated the matter will undergo careful review before any decision is made. So they're just kind of figuring all this out as they go. It's like they just keep creating their own like extra hurdles It feels like of just like, well, we hadn't thought about that.
I guess it makes it more epic if you can get over the hurdles that,
I mean,
that
if
you
can
make
do
for yourself.
all these things, I guess, yeah, that does kind of like add to it. Like, we created all these rules and we still got it done.
They're like the Shaun White of the X Games, basically, like just going way higher than everybody else for just to push the sport, you know.
So while they debate, the two red cows have been artificially inseminated in ancient Shiloh, and the pipeline is running. Oh, two more red cows. So they've got two more red cows, and now they're breeding them together. So the cows are only one piece of this picture, though. And this is the part of the story that the mainstream media is almost entirely ignoring. In July of 2026, it was confirmed that the Temple Institute has completed construction of a stone altar suitable for immediate temple service. Overseen by architect Rabbi Shamul Bassam, the altar was built precisely according to the biblical restriction in Exodus 2025 that the stones must not be shaped with metal tools because a sword is an instrument of death and the altar is an instrument of life. The stones were gathered uncut. The altar was constructed in a modular format, and it can be disassembled, loaded onto trucks, and transported to the Temple Mount and reassembled in a matter of hours. So they've got this thing mobile. Like, they're ready to go. We can throw this thing on a truck. I can have it to the mount, put together, end of day. Like, you give me a call in the morning, I can have this done. So, like, they're ready to go there. And in addition to the altar, the Institute has already fabricated more than 70 sacred temple vessels, the golden menorah, a replica standing in the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem today, visible from the Western Wall Plaza, the table of showbread, the incense altar, the copper laver, the exact biblically mandated garments for the high priest, including the breastplate with its 12 stones. And these are not museum pieces or artistic renderings. They are functional ritualistic objects constructed according to the Institute's understanding of the biblical and Talmudic specifications, described as ready for immediate use. So they've got like all the stuff, everything that they can do. Otherwise, like, they have direct control. They've already put that together. They've established a training program using virtual reality to teach men of the priestly line, Kohanim and Levim, exactly how to perform the sacrifice. So they got VRs on, like, practicing sacrificing stuff.
Huh.
Like, going through it. Like, this is what you're going to do. Like, this is what the temple would look like. You walk into, like...
Oh, like they've mocked it up, basically.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And like a VR, they've got like a video game of temple rituals.
Like how they recreated, what was it? Notre Dame with Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
Like the mappings that they did of Notre Dame for Assassin's Creed when it burned, they actually went and got the stuff from them to rebuild like parts of the church. Isn't that crazy? I still can't believe that's a real story, but I'm pretty sure it's a real story.
Yeah, I like that, except for killing cows and going into the Holy of Holies.
The Jewish version.
Yeah. The Jewish,
yeah. Do it, but Jewish.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I gotcha.
So as of mid 2026, 150,000 Israelis have enrolled in temple service education programs out of a stated national goal of 200,000. So they're gonna have people ready to go once they can like consecrate them. Like, once they've got the red heifer thing done and they've got the water and they can purify everybody, like, they're gonna have a gang of 2.0 Levites. Essentially. Like, they're gonna be ready to go on this. So, and it's mainly young people doing this. Like, it's mainly young men, I'm assuming, doing all of this. So the tools are built, the altar is ready, the priests are trained. They are simply waiting for the ashes to purify the site and the people. But the political ground has got to shift to make room for all this to happen. Like, for decades, the status quo on the Temple Mount, enforced by Israel and administered by the Jordanian Islamic Waqf, dictated that Muslims could pray on the Mount, but Jews and Christians could only visit. They can't pray. Which I didn't know that. You're not even allowed to pray on the Temple Mount.
You mean in the last couple years?
Well, it's changed.
Okay.
But yeah, up till now, pretty only Muslims were allowed to pray up there.
Because I think Glenn Beck tried to go out to Israel and they were like, we really don't want you going anywhere near the Temple Mount right now, just because of all the drama around all this stuff. And because our enemies are using this like as a tool to say we deserve to invade you or attack you or whatever.
So anyone caught moving their lips in Jewish prayer was arrested or removed. Israeli police enforced this arrangement with extreme strictness. But in January of 2026, that changed. Under the direction of National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, Israeli police officially allowed Jewish visitors to bring printed prayer books onto the Temple Mount for the first time. Bayadinu, an organization advocating for Jewish prayer rights, described it as a historic shift. The previous Jerusalem District Police Commander reportedly left his position after resisting political pressure to relax the restrictions. His replacement, an associate of Ben-Gvir, implemented the change within weeks of taking office. Then in February, the Knesset advanced legislation that would further reshape the legal framework governing holy sites in Jerusalem. And in May, ahead of the Jerusalem Day Flag March, Ben-Gvir personally ascended the Temple Mount, waved the Israeli flag, and declared that Israel had, quote, restored sovereignty on the Temple Mount, and that the site was in their hands. A far-right member of Knesset who accompanied him called openly for the removal of mosques and the construction of the temple. The political restraint that kept the Third Temple movement on the fringes for decades is dissolving. Like it's like we're gearing up here. The government ministers in charge of the police are now openly advocating for Jewish control of the Mount, and a recent survey found that 55% of Israeli Jews support rebuilding the temple on the Temple Mount. And that number has been rising for years. The Islamic world understands exactly what is happening. Hamas understood it when the Texas heifers arrived. The Waqf understands it now. The red heifer is not a religious curiosity. It is, in the words of those who study it, a powder keg capable of triggering a global war over the most contested piece of real estate on earth. But why does all this matter? It's because the Bible tells us exactly where this leads. The prophets Ezekiel, Zechariah, and Daniel all speak of a future temple in Jerusalem. Daniel 9:27 describes a coming figure who will make a covenant with many for 1 week, which is 7 years, and in the middle of that period will cause the sacrifice and offerings to cease. That requires a functioning temple with active sacrifices for that to happen. And you can't stop something that does not exist. Paul, writing in 2 Thessalonians 2, 3, and 4, describes the man of sin, the son of perdition, who will oppose and exalt himself above everything that is called God, so that he, as God, sitteth in the temple of God, shewing himself that he is God. Not a metaphorical temple, a physical one in Jerusalem with a seat in the holy place. And in Revelation 11, the Apostle John is told to measure the temple of God and the altar. And to me, this implies a physical functioning temple exists during the tribulation. The two witnesses prophesy from Jerusalem for 1,260 days. The Antichrist desecrates the temple, the abomination of desolation that Jesus warned about in Matthew 24:15. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place. All this requires a holy place to stand in. So the third temple is not the beginning of the messianic age of peace, as the Temple Institute hopes, according to the New Testament, which they don't believe. The third temple is the stage for the greatest deception in human history. It is a platform from which the Antichrist will declare himself to be God, the temple will be built, sacrifices will resume, and then they'll be stopped. And the one who stops them will demand to be worshipped in their place. here is the theological weight of what we're watching. The Temple Institute is building the stage. They believe they are preparing for the Messiah. The New Testament tells us that the figure who will ultimately take the stage and sit in that temple will not be the Messiah, he will be the counterfeit.
Yeah, I mean, this is where you're wading into some deep theological waters now when you're talking about how do Christians view some of these apocalyptic passages in scripture, and what is it all? How do you interpret it all? And I think what you kind of were talking through there is sort of a dispensational view of the coming events potentially, right? From the Christian perspective
Yeah.
of how the Jews are viewing this, what they want to be potentially a third temple. Although I have seen some Jews really downplaying it, which maybe that's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Like, was it that their enemies were, saying, using this as an occasion against them, or was it that they tried to downplay it first? Like, I don't know. I mean, you tell me, um, but yeah, Matthew 24, where it talks about that abomination of desolation,
Mm-hmm.
I think of as like the temple that was destroyed in AD 70, but not all Christians think of it that way. So, and maybe that's, even if it was that, maybe that's still a foreshadowing of another potential situation like that. Because I know a lot of Christians during the Reformation days thought it was going to be, the Antichrist was going to be the Pope, or was the Pope at the time, or whatever, and so everyone's trying to figure out who the Antichrist is. And
Oh yeah, there's definitely different camps. I mean, there's a sect of Christians that believe that the second coming already happened, that we're actually rolling up to Armageddon and the end of it all. That we're in Satan's little season right now. And there's some pretty decent arguments. I mean, you can point to stuff that Christ said and that the apostles said, that they were calling it the end of the age, and like telling people not to get married because there's no point. Like, it's all getting ready to end, and the temple getting destroyed. And then you see, I mean, there's arguments that we may have had, and this is really getting out there, that history may have actually been changed, that we're actually several hundred years in the past, that time got blacked out and like pushed forward.
Superman flew around the world a few times and rolled the clock back or whatever.
Well, not that. Oh man, I'm blank, and I didn't prepare for this part. There's different theories, like because of the cities that we uncover that are covered, like that were destroyed, and some of the buildings we find even in America, like underground, where it doesn't make any sense. Like these, like these immaculate buildings all over the world that like we don't. How did they build those? Like, there's a lot of stuff that it's like, did we really build these like massive cathedrals during what we consider the dark ages, where like people were kind of regressing according to what history points at?
People were probably a lot smarter back then than we gave them credit for. Like, I don't think they know how the pyramids were built. I don't think they know how Stonehenge got set up. And a lot of these cathedrals took 100 or more years to build.
Well, and just some of the craftsmanship in them, like we can't do. I mean, and all those things we can't duplicate today. And it's like, how did they do that without modern technology?
You kind of don't think about it, but like certain crafts, like if you don't have people using it for modern reasons, they like, you lose the knowledge in a weird way. Like masons, or like stone masons and stuff, I don't think that they like know nearly as much as like people in the past used to, because they worked with that stuff all the time. Maybe at least I've heard that to be true. The stonemasons in the chat will tell us otherwise. But
I actually did a bit of stonemasonry.
Did you?
After high school, very briefly. I worked.
We know all there is to know. Is what? Yeah, that's what you're gonna say.
I mean, no, not just that. It's like, it's hard work, like shaping rocks and doing all that, like, because you're doing it with what you would consider something from hundreds of years ago, a chisel and a hammer, and like you're not doing it with crazy technology. You're doing it in pretty primitive ways, essentially, because that is theoretically one of the better ways to do it. No, the argument though is that we actually already had that 1,000-year reign, and that's why we see all these things, is because everything was kind of perfect then. And so we were able to accomplish all these things because we were much more heavenly inspired. And so there's that argument, and it's hard to refute some of the biblical things that they kind of point out, as far as like things that were said by the apostles and Jesus, as just like, how do you reconcile this generation won't pass away before I return? Like, that's hard to be like, yeah, but he meant he wasn't coming back for like at least a couple thousand years. Like, I don't know how you do that.
Well, I think, well, at least you're kind of talking about Matthew 24 and the disciples, their question was basically Jesus, it says in Matthew 24:1, Jesus left the temple and was going away when his disciples came to point out to him the buildings of the temple. So they're like, hey, check out this temple. And I think in other places it was like they're marveling at how awesome it is, and he says, but he answered them, you see all these things, do you not? Truly, I say to you, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. And then their natural follow-up is like, that's like their pride and joy. The temple is everything, right? So they say, it says, as he sat down on the Mount of Olives, his disciples came to him privately saying, tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? So like two questions was like, when is all this going to be destroyed? I mean, if someone was like, your bank account's going to be raided, I'd be like, and when? Could you go ahead and tell me?
Yeah.
And then what's the sign of the end of the age? And they see those as one event, and Christ kind of splits them up. And basically, I think he's kind of giving a near prediction and a far prediction, like they're not really the same event in Matthew 24. There's the near destruction of the temple in AD 70. And then he's going to come back later on after what I would consider to be the millennium. And I consider that as I'm a mill right now position. No one really knows. I mean, people know, maybe someone's out there has got it all figured out, but us,
I would love to hear from them if they did.
Us average, Joes reading our Bible, we're just trying our best. But, the millennium is like 1,000 years is what it means, right? So, there are people that look at that as a literal 1,000 years. And then there are people who look at it as like a metaphor. And I look at it more as like a symbol or a metaphor of like the church age. We are in the age of tribulation, But not everyone shares that view. In fact, a lot of the people that you're probably talking to on the podcast are looking at this from what is probably the main position of a, dispensational, pre-mill type of lens, right?
Yeah.
So they're going to be like, Kyle, crazy. What crazy guy, he views it as 1,000 years is not literal. That's crazy, you know? But it just depends on how you read Revelation. Do you read it literally and linearly, or do you read it symbolic and like cyclical? Like, I think Revelation repeats, and it's like zooming in on like a football, a football event where they're gonna decide whether he caught the ball or not, and they look at every angle, and I think that's what Revelation's more like personally. But who knows?
Something from I never heard that. I heard Ken. It starts with an H.
Ken Ham?
No, not Ken Ham. He does like a lot of dinosaur stuff, and he had a radio show for. Oh man, I can see him, and I'm just blanking on. He's been around a long time, but heard him explain the Revelation is actually being told twice. Chapters 1 through 11 is the events, and then 12 through the rest of the book actually repeats them. It's just explaining them more thoroughly. They overlap each other.
Well, in scripture, you have Joseph interpreting Pharaoh's dreams, and he says, I believe he says the dreams are doubled to show the event is fixed. It's referring to one event.
Yes.
So that's, I think, at least has happened before in apocalyptic literature, where and you have in Revelation the bowls, the trumpets, the seals, the trumpets, and the bowls, right? So maybe it's actually just a recapitulation of the same 7 events or same 7 symbols, right? Could be.
Ken Hovind?
Oh, maybe. Ken Ham's a dinosaur guy, I thought.
Yeah, it's not the dinosaur guy.
Evangelical or evangelist?
Hovind. Kent Hovind.
Got it. Yeah. Well, I could see how you'd mix those two up. They're pretty close.
Yeah. I saw him kind of break that down one time, and I was like, that actually does. When I heard it like play by play and overlapped, I was like, all right, that kind of does make sense instead of reading it just as one continuous chain of events. So maybe I'm I'm not sure where I fall at this point because the stuff I'm hearing about the possible second coming already happened and all that, like the more evidence, like the more I see people argue that Joe Telford is one who's a big proponent of that, and I see a lot of his stuff and he makes some very strong arguments.
But see, that's a good attitude to have. And I think I need to have that same attitude is even if you think you know something, you should be careful, right? Because especially with this one, I've watched interviews where people sit across from each other, great Christian men, and they disagree so fiercely. And you're just looking at, these are people in the word all the time.
Mhm.
And you're like, okay, well, apocalyptic literature, maybe it's tough to interpret. So we should be humble when we approach these things and like, you've taught me stuff, I try to help you out. I don't know if I am, but I try, you know what I mean?
I respect your opinion.
Yeah,
I think you're wrong on this. I don't have the right answer, but I'm pretty sure it's not yours.
That's fair. Well, the funny thing to me is I read John MacArthur's book, which is that, dispensational
I
pre,
need to check that out.
and I think it's something like just Revelation or something like that.
Yeah.
But I came away from it going, man, I just have more questions than answers,
Yeah.
but a lot of people, and I'm not trying to throw shade at him. I think John MacArthur, rest in peace, amazing man of God.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So we all can learn things from each other.
Yeah, no, his study Bible is a go-to on a lot of interpretation stuff. Like, what did that mean? Oh, okay. Like, he's pretty spot on. It is a subject that definitely is kind of all over the place. And I do stay open to, I mean, anybody who's listened to this show the whole way through has watched my thoughts shift on a lot of subjects, like a lot of stuff, like aliens in particular. Like if you go back to early episodes of this show on what we thought aliens were, what was going on, like the demon stuff was like a very small possibility. We're like, that might be some of it. And now I've gone to the complete opposite, and where I'm like, I think that's most of it, if not all of it.
That
Like,
they're angels and demons.
yeah, that
Yeah.
everything happening is just, it's probably demonic. I've heard some good arguments for that, and I think I kind of agree. I think I just say it a little bit different. I've had people like write into the show and be like, no, there's other entities too, and but the only ones that want to interact with us are the bad ones. And I'm like, I could see that too. They're like, they're enemies of God too. There's something different, but they're enemies of God too. The good ones who are like cool with everything, like don't want nothing to do with us because we're kind of evil compared to them. And I'm like, that would make sense too. Um,
Angels are basically like messengers in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
And like Daniel, he gets like an angel sent to him after he's been praying, and the angel, encourages him and gives him help and aid, right?
Well,
and his visions and
term we use in English that are actually a like kind of umbrella term for heavenly creatures. Like,
yeah.
if you actually read through the Bible, there's like a bunch of different kinds described.
Seraphim.
Yeah, cherubim.
Cherubim.
Yeah, like there's a bunch of different things in God's service that are not what we kind of call them all angels, and that's not really what they are.
You feel like there's like a tree of life, almost like a different like species of angelic beings, basically.
Probably. I mean, to think that I don't know. I always get hung up on when people are like, we're the only thing God created. I'm like, he's literally been around forever. Like, you think we're the first? Like, we know from scripture that there's hosts of other things just surrounding him on the throne that sound super weird. Like when you hear him, wheels inside of wheels with eyeballs all over him. Like, that's like, did you know? And I don't know if you and me have actually talked about this. All the places in scripture where like somebody sees an angel and the angel goes, be not afraid. Do you know what that actually is in like Hebrew and stuff? You know what they're actually saying? We've interpreted as be not afraid. It literally means stop screaming. It's okay.
I mean, if you saw a being of like that amount of power and your eyes were almost blown out the back of your head, I think you'd probably have a similar reaction.
Like literally every time they show up, like people start screaming and stuff, and like, hey, no, just chill out. It's fine. Please stop screaming. Like I'm sure they get tired of showing up and just getting screamed at literally every time that they appear. That's probably why they don't appear to people very often. They're just tired of getting screamed at all the time.
Could be.
But I thought that was hilarious when I like actually found that out. I don't know if you've ever heard that before.
I only from you, I think,
okay.
one time. Yeah, I don't have my Hebrew, concordance or whatever over here to fact check you. Nor do I know Hebrew, so I'll take your word for it.
I got into some. I went on a word study season at one point and started really looking stuff up in Greek and Aramaic and Hebrew just to see like what do they actually mean by that, and it didn't contradict anything. It added a whole other level of understanding though. And then there was stuff like that where I'm just like, well, that's hilarious. Like,
And if your audience is looking for good tools like for Bible stuff, I really like the Blue Letter Bible. I'm sure you've probably used it a little bit. You can kind of click in and get the Greek, and
I'm very
it's good.
catalog in most of my studying. Like,
That's good too.
I know you don't like to you're one that carries like a digital Bible at church.
I do. Well, sometimes I carry my prop, physical Bible, which it's not really a prop, but I mean, you know what I mean. I got the digital Bible too. So,
oh no, I got Bibles on Bibles on Bibles, and they're all physical. Like I want to physically sit there and touch it. I got notebooks that, like, it would be more helpful for me if it was all digital, like all my notes and stuff. But like, nah, I just end up writing all that stuff. I got Bibles that are highlighted through like crazy. Yeah, and then expository dictionaries and all that stuff. Like, no, I want the physical. I don't know what it is. I want to touch it. I want to flip a book to look up a word. I don't know. I like it.
That's nice. At home I've got the ESV journal Bible with each individual. Well, some of the books are grouped together because they're tiny, but otherwise you've got Jeremiah or whatever, or Psalms is in its own book, and then you've got spots to journal next to what you're reading, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, no, that's
so I'm not entirely digital Bible here, but they are good tools if you want to, use them. And I think you can get them online too. Blue Letter Bible.
I've heard of it, but yeah, I've never.
It's just nice. It kind of puts a lot of things in one spot. And they've also got like a lot of Matthew Henry commentaries, which I like a lot of his stuff in there. You can click on a passage and click to commentaries and just kind of read stuff from him. I can't remember when he was, 1800s. I don't want to get it wrong, but yeah, he was a couple hundred years ago, probably, at least.
No, there's something to just getting a big desk and just having a bunch of books out. I could do this. I have multiple monitors. Like I could do this all digitally. There's just something about having them all out. Maybe it's just it feels important. I'm not sure. I'm not saying that doing it a digital way is bad. I'm just I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people have recommended getting a physical Bible. Like Charlie Kirk was a big fan of getting a physical Bible, if you know him. So, and
I have
yeah,
him,
yeah, I know you have because we mentioned him all the time on Reform or Die. But
I got videos banned about all that actually. I think TikTok.
Well, you can cut this part out,
Oh no, I think we'll be all right. This doesn't go on TikTok. I just won't. This won't become a reel.
There you go.
This part won't become a reel. But yeah, I guess to bring it back to all this, before we close, I guess just like a word of caution. So like some people look at all these developments and immediately begin assigning dates, which don't do that. Don't do that. Jesus was pretty explicit about that. I think that's one thing all Christians kind of agree on. The no man will know the day nor the hour. I don't think anybody's like, yeah, well, I shouldn't say that because there's a lot of people that have tried to predict the day and the hour. The history of prophecy interpretation is littered with people who looked at current events and decided the end was imminent, and they were wrong 100% of the time so far. So 100%, it's been a zero batting average on that. So I'm not in the business of setting dates. Jesus just commanded discernment in Matthew 16:3. He rebuked the Pharisees for being able to read the weather, but unable to read the signs of the times. A nation that did not exist as a sovereign entity for nearly 2 millennia is now systematically preparing the physical instruments for a form of worship that has been impossible for the same period. That fact is not trivial. It is not a coincidence. It is a pattern that careful readers of prophecy have been watching for decades. The red heifer function in part as a test of observation. The question is whether we are watching what is actually taking place on the ground or whether we are only attending to the narratives that confirm what we already prefer to believe. So we're watching the pieces fall into place in real time. The altar is built, the vessels are forged, the priests are trained. 150,000 Israelis are enrolled in temple service education. The political will to take the Temple Mount is rising at the highest levels of the Israeli government, and the secretive, determined search for the perfect red heifer continues in the hills of Golan Heights. They are building the stage, and the curtain is getting ready to rise. One thing we know for sure, Jesus walked this earth. There's more historical evidence for his existence outside the Bible than there is for Julius Caesar. Everyone needs to closely examine these things and make a decision about who he was. Is he Lord, liar, or lunatic? Those are really the only three options. He claimed to be God. He either was or he wasn't. And if he was, then the book he authenticated, the Bible, is telling us exactly what is coming next. So that's really it. I mean,
Yeah, I think, you know, we pray for Jewish people that they would, turn and accept Christ as Messiah, as the one who was promised to come, right?
yeah.
And it's to me it's a little bit sad that they missed it.
And they need us to turn on their lights on Saturdays.
Yeah, I don't know what to say to that. That was a good one.
So, dude, thank you for being here.
This was fun, man. Thanks for having me out.
Yeah, this is a good time. Go check out Reform or Die. Go to reformordie.com. Go to crypticaccounts.com for all of this. And as you can see, this is becoming more frequent again. So stay tuned and more to come. Thanks for watching and listening.